We'll do a review on the Likutei Sichos in Chelek Yud Zayin. This is the Sikha for Shabbos Hagadol. In this Sikha, the Rebbe explains the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, which gives the reason for Shabbos Hagadol with the great miracle. The Rebbe asks, why is it such a great miracle, and why is it only because it's a great miracle, it's Shabbos HaGodol, and a regular miracle would not make it Shabbos HaGodol? And the Rebbe explains the whole idea over here. We're talking about Shabbos, that the idea of Shabbos, how it's related to actually Shabbos. And there are two ways to conquer the negative, either by Shavas Shelo Yezuku, if you have negative damaging forces, so Shabbos you rest so that they don't do damage, or you have a Shabbos in a way that they actually turn around and there's no mazikim at all. To create a Shabbos that they're not mazik in a way is greater and stronger than just not doing, not existing. So exactly the two levels of Shabbos, as the Rebbe will explain in the Sikha in great detail. Shabbos Hagadol, Aleph. Der Tam was der Shabbos for Chag Pesach wird angerufen Shabbos Hagadol. The reason why the Shabbos that precedes Pesach, the festival of Pesach, is called Shabbos Hagadol, the big Shabbos. Zog der Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch v'zel Shoyne. So the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch says, and this is quoting the Alter Rebbe, says like this: Shabbos shelifnei haPesach koirin oisoi Shabbos Hagadol. The Shabbos that precedes Pesach, we call it the big Shabbos. We call it Shabbos Hagadol. And the reason, says the Alter Rebbe, lefi shenase boi neis godol, because a great miracle took place on that Shabbos, a big miracle. It's called big Shabbos. What is the neis godol that took place? Continues Alter Rebbe, Pesach Mitzrayim hoyo mikechu mibaosor lachodesh. The Pesach that the Yidden, Korban Pesach, that the Yidden brought in Mitzrayim, that started from, as the pasuk says, kechu, take it, and it started baosor lachodesh, from the 10th of the month. So basically, the Korban Pesach started off at the 10th of the month. K'moshe Kosov, as the pasuk says, be'oser lachodesh hazeh, on the 10th of this month, ve'yichu lahem ish seleves oves v'gomer. So each one should take a sheep per family, etc., for the Korban Pesach. But pasuk says you started off not Erev Pesach. You started off the 10th day in Mitzrayim. They had to start it from the 10th of the month. What day was it in the week? That 10th of the month. V'yisayom Shabbos hoyo. That was Shabbos, the day that the Yidden were instructed to take the Pesach, to start the process of the Korban Pesach, was on Shabbos, on the 10th of the month. As the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe will bring it down later on, because since Pesach was on Thursday, so it turns out, which is the 15th, so 5 days earlier, which is Shabbos, that was the 10th, it was on Shabbos. So when it all started, and when they took the sheep and they tied it to their beds, so that was all on Shabbos, the Shabbos before Pesach. And when the Jewish people took their Korban Pesach on that Shabbos, Niskabtzu b'choyre Mitzrayim etzel Yisrael. So all the first born Egyptians, they all gathered by the Yidden. B'shalum lomo zeh meisim kach. And they asked them, they inquired, why are you doing so? Why are you taking this karbanet? What are you bringing? What are you going to do with this sheep? Amru lahem. So the Yidden responded to them, Zevach Pesach hu laHashem. This is a Pesach offering to Hashem, a shechting of the korban Pesach of Hashem. Why are we shechting to Hashem? What's the celebration? Sheyarig b'choyre Mitzrayim, that He's going to kill the firstborn of the Egyptians. So they answered them. That's what they're doing. Holchu b'choyreihem eitzel aviseim. So the firstborn went to their fathers, ve'al parei, and to parei, levakesh mehem sheyishluchu es Yisrael, to ask them to send out the Jewish people from Egypt. But they didn't want to, they didn't agree. So the firstborn waged war with their parents and with Parei, and they killed many of them. And this is what the pasuk also says in Tehillim, that He smites the Egyptians with their firstborn, that the firstborn itself, that was the miracle that took place on Shabbos. So this miracle has been set up as a to commemorate this in the generation. We commemorated it b'Shabbos, that this should be in the Shabbos before Pesach, just like the first time the miracle took place on Shabbos that preceded Pesach. They called it Shabbos Hagadol. This is the entire lashon of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch as it relates to the reason for Shabbos Hagadol. So, and the Rebbe will later on also discuss why they set it up from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, why they set it up on the Shabbos versus setting it up on the 10th day of the month. Whether Shabbos or not, we'll see. But first, the Rebbe asks two questions over here. First of all, why are we calling it Shabbos Hagadol? Because it was a Nes Gadol. If it was a regular Nes, it would also be Shabbos Hagadol, because it was any Nes is Gadol. And two, what's really the benefit of this great miracle where the Jewish people continued to be enslaved? So they killed each other, but it didn't really seem to benefit the Yid. Let's look inside. Darfim verstehen. Aleph, Farvos is the Alter Rebbe Madgish. Why is the Alter Rebbe emphasize Shenase Boi Neis Godel? We call the Shabbos HaGodel. It seems because a great miracle took place. Was from them is mashma. From that it appears as Davket Sulib Neis Godel, that it is specifically because it's a big miracle. Where the Shabbos ongeru from Shabbos HaGodel. That's why we call it a big Shabbos, because of a big miracle. Why do we need it to be big in order for it to be a Shabbos HaGodel? I feel when es volt dem Shabbos geschehen stam anes, even if that Shabbos just a plain miracle happened, not a big miracle, but a plain miracle. Nit kein nes Godel, not a great miracle, but as euch gewen a tam maspik zu oistelen dem Shabbos und im Anruf von Shabbos HaGodel. That would have been also a sufficient reason to distinguish this Shabbos and to call it Shabbos HaGodel. It's a great Shabbos because of a miracle, not because of a great miracle, because of a miracle. Since he has, this Shabbos has in it an advantage and a greatness relative relative to the other Shabbos of the year. So it is a Shabbos HaGodel for a miracle, not for a Nes Godel. So what's the point in the Alter Rebbe bringing Godel? It seems to be that this is Godel within the Shabbos, as the Rebbe will explain. Beis, noch mehr is nicht verstandig, more, further is not understood. Why is it such a great miracle? In was besteht die Größkeit from them nest? In what consists the greatness of this miracle? As soll angerufen werden, so that we call it nit neis tam. We don't call it just a miracle, nor neis godel. We call it a great miracle. L'chayre is nit niker kein gadlus. It seems like you can't tell any greatness. Hein in them nes gufa. Whether we talk about the actual miracle, is not such a great miracle. Warum is nit given an oifun von a hafla. This wasn't wondrous. Mervid de hafla for the anderen is more wondrous than the wonders of the other miracles. The other miracles that took place, there's nothing, they are no less wondrous, and this is not more wondrous than the other miracle. Why would this be a neis godel in what happened over here? And more than that, and for sure, the results of this did not bring any relief to the Yidden. In the teitzoes v'to'eles hanes, the results and the benefit of the miracle, we don't see the great miracle. Also, after they killed many of them, seinen Iden als geblieben in Golus Mitzrayim, the Jews continued to remain in the exile of Egypt. No big result, nothing beneficial. Ungedarft ankommen zum Neis von Makas Bechoides, and they needed to come on to the miracle of the killing of the firstborn, kedei befreit werden von Mitzrayim, so that they would be freed from Egypt. So what kind of a great benefit is there fun arish gekumen fariden? What came out from this for the Yidden? And the Rebbe will explain later on that this was a idea that the Bechorim, which are the strength of Egypt, and still they're fighting for the release, and that's a Godeldike Shabbos, because that's a turnaround. It's not only we destroyed the opponent, the other miracles which caused damage, but we have the opponent fighting for the release of the Yidden, as the Rebbe will explain later on. A further base, the second aspect, idea, was mahodem zikorin haneis ledoides kivei given nit loit yom hachodesh, that the to commemorate this miracle for the generations to come was set up not by the day of the month. Vidar nes von Yitzias Mitzrayim mukayotze, where such as it is, the miracle is commemorated of the exodus of Egypt and others like that. We always go by the day of the month. So Pesach is the 15th of the month. We don't, regardless of what day of the week over here. Over here, we set it up to the Shabbos, the day of the week. Why? Nor loitin yoim hashavua, but rather by the day of the week. Shabbos for the Tazbara. That also requires some explanation. The Alter Rebbe is dort mevayer dem tam. The Alter Rebbe over there, quoted from the Shulchan Aruch, gives the reason why was it set up for Shabbos Hagadol and not the Yud Nisan should be that commemorating this great miracle. Is dort mevayer dem tam. Velomo loy kovuhu ba'asiri l'chodesh stam. So how come the Chachamim did not set it up on the 10th day of the month? Plain, every 10th day of the month. Bein shechal b'Shabbos, bein shechal b'choil, k'derech shenikvu kol ha'moedim. Whether it rests, it comes out on the Shabbos, or it comes out on the weekday, just as the Chachamim set up all the festivals. All the festivals are always, the Alter Rebbe brings down, all the festivals are always set up by the day of the month. And the Arabic is the reason Lifisha Basora ben Nisan Meisam Miriam, because the 10th of Nisan Miriam died, and because she died on the 10th of Nisan, so therefore the Chachamim set up a fast day on the day that Miriam dies, when it comes in the weekday, and therefore they didn't want this celebration to be made at the same time when there's a fast day on Yud Nisan. So therefore they said, let's not do it on Yud Nisan, let's do it on Shabbos. The Chachamim set up the Shabbos before, there's no fasting there, and therefore we do the Shabbos Hagadol on Shabbos and not on the day of the month. But the Rebbe says there has to be a connection between this Makas Bechoiris and the fighting of the Bechoirim, Shabbos Hagadol, not Makkah, the fighting of the Bechorim, the Khu, the bringing the sheep, that brought to this whole incident, and this Nes Gadol has to do with Shabbos. It's not only set up on Shabbos because they didn't want to set it up on the 10th of the week, but it's also, there's some connection to Shabbos. As the Rebbe brings out, this whole procedure of the Eibishter telling them to bring the sheep violated the Shabbos, which some of the Yidden already observed then. And why would the Eibishter bring out this action Dafke on Shabbos? So this shows us there is not only that it's not done on the 10th in a regular every year in the weekday, but there's also a connection to Shabbos. Let's look inside. Aber von deswegen still, wie bald as alle Inyonim von Torah seinen betachlis hadiyuk. All aspects of Torah are totally precise. Muss man sagen, so therefore we need to say, Anoisef zum tam shlili. In addition to the negative, the reason of negative why we did not do it on the 10th. Why did we not do it on the 10th? Because we can't do it on the 10th. We have to say there's also a positive reason for doing it Afkan Shabbos. There's also a reason and an idea which is a positive that we need to do it on Shabbos. Farvos mehodem zikorin l'doidos. Why we established that this commemorating for generations to come, bashtimt dafke of Shabbos, it was set up specifically of Shabbos. Das haste, which means to say, as der Teuchen Hanes, the contents, this miracle, hot shayches miyuchetes to Shabbos, has a special connection to Shabbos. So the Rebbe says we have to say that there's also more than just that we can't make it on the 10th and the weekday. There's also a positive reason why we want to do it on Shabbos. The Rebbe is going to prove this now. The Rebbe is going to prove this now because of the fact that all this started on Shabbos. Why did the Eibishter do it on Shabbos? This is euch muchrach from them. This is also forced out. We can prove from the fact was the Eibishter sivu v'yichu lahem ish celebates of his gomer. That Hashem's command that each person should take a sheep for the family is given as, and that was a mezol doston davke inem tog von ba'osel lachidish hazeh, that Hashem told him to do it on the 10th month, which was a Shabbos, was his demot given Shabbos. Why did Hashem told him to do this on Shabbos? What did it involve? Chotz das is verbunden mit kinyan. This is associated. You have to acquire umasa umaten, doing business. Tiltul balachayim, moving the balachayim. These are all various different prohibitions. The Rebbe in the Ha'aretz discusses which are Torah or rabbinic, and they too shouldn't have been violated over there. Hashem gave them hamoitzi b'shus l'shus, taken from one domain to another domain. Bikur mimumchulu, inspecting it of blemishes. was eine Bestira zu Shvisas und Menuchas HaShabbos. These are in conflict, contradict to resting and having the relaxation, the Menucha on Shabbos. All these are items that conflict, and yet the Eibishter told them to do it. Now, you're going to say, well, Shabbos wasn't yet, it was before Matan Torah. Warum af al piyasis noch demels given. Even though at that time it was Farder Tzivu Shmira Shabbos, even before Mora, it was before any command of Shabbos, is noisef of them. But still, even though the Rebbe says, first of all, Yidden did observe the Shabbos even before it was commanded. Is noisef of them was vibald as kiyimu ha'ovas kol ha'toira kula nitno. Since our forefathers observed, fulfilled the Torah, entire Torah before it was given, is verstandig, so it's understood as oich al kol ponim a Chelek von zeire Kinder. So that also some of their children, the Yidden, the children of the forefathers, ham abgehit the mitzvahs ha-Torah. They kept the mitzvahs of the Torah. If the forefathers did it, some of their children, b'chlolon shmiras Shabbos, and including in some of the mitzvahs was keeping the Shabbos. Oich koidem moro u'matan Torah, even before moro, which is the first time kasher tzivcha, which the Eibishter given some loy choik u'mishpat, which is referencing the time of moro, and then from Matan Torah when the Yidden got the Aseres HaDibros, and the Eibishter told them about Shabbos. So even before that, they observed the Shabbos. But the Rebbe says, besides that, it is very clear in the expounding drushes of our sages of blessed memory, as noch in mitten zman hashibud in Mitzrayim, while there was still in the middle of the slavery of Egypt, had Moshe gepoiled by Pare, Moshe impacted Pare as Yom HaShabbos, so by the Eden Zayin Yom Menucha, that the day of Shabbos should be a day of rest, that he influenced and impacted that Pare should give them Shabbos off. They sollen nicht darfen arbeiten bis Shabbos, that they should not need to do their work on Shabbos. So Shabbos was something to reckon with. First of all, a lot of the Yidden observed it. Even Pare granted them relief on the Shabbos day, and not to have to work. So why would Hashem Dafke tell them to go ahead and do all those malachas, those work involvement on Shabbos, with the Chumba Asar, uvibal as nit kokundik of them, notwithstanding this, oder Eibishter bashtim dem zman, Hashem set the time, von v'yikchu lahem goimer, they should take for them Dafke b'yoyim HaShabbos. He set it up for Yev Dafke HaShabbos. Is those gufa hichocha, that in alone is evidence as that inyan from v'yichu, that this idea of yichu is negeya b'myucha to Shabbos. This is connected and associated especially with the Shabbos. So this is not only set up Shabbos Hagadol because we can't do it on a weekday because of the fast of Miriam, but rather there is a positive connection. Hashem told them to do this on Shabbos because that is essentially related to Shabbos, as the Rebbe will explain later on what Shabbos is. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, when things turn around, and here there's a turnaround from the Egyptian, from their Bechorim, to fight for the freedom of the Yid. Ois Gimel. Der Biur Bechol Hanal, wird sein verstandig, the explanation of the above, the questions that we asked, will be understood la'achar ha'hasbora inem toichen v'inyan ha'Shabbos b'chlal, after explaining the idea, the contents and the idea of Shabbos in a general. What is Shabbos? Der Tzemach Tzedek is mevayer oifem posik mizmer shir liyom HaShabbos. The Tzemach Tzedek explains on the verse, the mizmer shir for Yom HaShabbos, al pi HaMedrash, based on the Medrash. Bozokt oif dem posik liyom HaShabbos. What does it mean, the day of rest? He says, Lemashbis min zikim min ha'olam shelo yaziku. He's going to cease, stop. It's going to be a rest and a cutoff from all the mazikim, those do damage from the world. Shelo yaziku, they won't do damage. And likewise the pasuk says, "V'gor ze'ev im keves," that the wolf will live in peace together with the sheep. So, what does that mean? Tzemach Tzedek explains, as der pirush und teuchen von Shabbos, that the meaning and the content of Shabbos is the inyan von shviso min hamazikim, is the idea of resting from those who do damage, of the mazikim. That has two possibilities, how you stop, how you rest from the mazikim. Either they stop doing damage, or they stop existing entirely. Aleph. Number one is maviram min ha'olam. You remove them from the world, so they cease, so you don't have to deal with those who are mazikim because they're no longer in the world. The ganze mitzius von mazikim wird nisbadel. The entire existence of the mazikim becomes nullified. So there is no more mazikim. That's one level. But the second level is mashbiso sheloi tazik. You stop it, not that you remove it, but you make it in a way that it will no longer do damage. The mazikim bleiben. That means the mazikim, they remain. Nor the shvisa tut oif. But what is the resting, cease, stopping, accomplishes as a zainen nitshayich zu mazik zayin, that they are not going connected to doing damage. And the Rebbe explains the second level is a higher level. Und der zweiter oif von shvisa mazikim is a hecher wie der erster. The second one is higher than the first one. We are zokt in Teiras Kahanim, as it says in Teiras Kahanim. V'bald as davke durch dem oifim, because it is specifically when you change around that they won't do, they'll remain, but they won't do damage. That way you accomplish ev der inyan fun is hapcha chashechel nehoira, that you're turning darkness into light. The mazikim alein verun is hapech meraletoiv. The mazikim themselves are turned around from evil to good. So you don't get rid of the mera of the mazikim, but you turn them around to good. Unchotch as the iker gili. When is this revelation really going to take place? That liyom HaShabbos from the mazikim, the main, when is this going to revealed from Shabbos in an oifen to this way from mashbis mazikim shelo yaziku, to remove the mazikim that they shouldn't do damage? When is this going to happen? It's going to happen la'osid lovi, v'zayin la'osid lovi. This is going to be in the future to come. Is ober ke'enze given in Shabbos Bereishis. But some of it similar to this was also already on the Shabbos Bereishis, on the first Shabbos, Shabbos shebetchilas habriya, the Shabbos that was the beginning of creation. Biz as is euch given begashmis kipshutek, to the extent that even physically you can see that there was a rest in the physical world. Virazal Zogun, our sages of blessed memory say, Lamed Vov Shor Shimsha Oisa Ha'oira, that light that was in the first on Shabbos served for 36 consecutive hours. which means there was no night. The first 12 hours of the day, it was light again the next 12 hours of the night, and then it continued the next 12 hours the next day. So it was 36 hours that the sun shined. The Shabbos Bereshis is given the Laila Kayom Yoyer. On Shabbos Bereshis, it was the night shone was light like the day. Der Choshech von Laila is the Sabach geworden la'or v'yom. The darkness of the night has been transformed, turned around to day, to light and day. What does this mean? Why on Shabbos do we transform the night into day, that it changes around? Is because that, in essence, is what Shabbos and Menucha is, as Rabbi explains. Dalet, der Tam, was is dort der Inyan von his Habche b'Shabbos. The reason why we have this idea, this concept of turning things around on Shabbos, it does mitzad them that comes because of this, was that etzem zman von Shabbos is an Inyan von his Habche, that the essence, the time, the Shabbos time, the day, the time of Shabbos, in essence of that time, is the concept of Ishapcha. How so? Rebbe will explain that time of Shabbos is higher than time. It's turnaround. It's time, but it's higher than time. It's a level of Ishapcha. Beginning from Shabbos, Zogar Zal Rebbe explained about Shabbos. Our sages of blessed memory tell us, Ma hoya ha'olam chosar menucha. In the 6 days, what was the world still lacking? Rest, relaxation. Basa Shabbos, basa menucha. When Shabbos comes menucha. Darf man verstehen. So we need to understand. Since you do the Maimer from Magid, it's known, the saying of the Magid, that Azman is a Nivra Punkt be'al Nivroim. That time is a creation. The Eibishter created animals and people and grass. He also created time. So another creation. Und das meint, and that means, nicht nur as far bries oilom, seine nicht gewen nivroim. It doesn't mean only that before the world created, there was no creations, was auf sie is chal die medide und agbola von zman. So that before the world creation, there was no other creation that has the measure and the limitations of time. So as to say that once the creations of Asarisim from Sheishim Bereshis, so now they're in time. But what happened before, they weren't bound, they weren't in the definition, they weren't created in time, it wasn't time. Warum? Euch noch Brias Oilam, because even after the world is created, so there are things that are not limited to time. So the fact that time was created doesn't just mean limited in time, because even after the world was created, there are many things. If you talk about a logical, an idea. Idea is not time-bound, it's an idea, but it's not connected to time. Which are not limited, they're not defined, they're not at all in the boundaries of Zman. So we're not trying to say that created beings all of a sudden have to be in time and before they were in time. We're trying to say nor that etzem metzias hazman is anivra, that the essence, the existence of time, created. Hashem created time. The Rebbe is saying it's not just that things before were not limited in time, but there was time. But he's saying there was no time before because time is a creation. Because things after creation also don't have to be limited in time. So what was the creation of time? That means that before there was no such a thing as time. And then later on, but the essence, the time, is a creation. Punkt wie der Gufa adoimem tzemeach chai, just like the bodies, the inanimate creations, the tzemeach, growing creations, the chai, the animal creation, but the humans, sein es habe geworden b'sheish yimei Maisa, they were created into existence from nothingness. Azoy is oich etzem metzias azman. Same thing is the essence, the existence of time. Abriya unisabus chadosha. It's a creation. It's a new entity. Memeles move on, and therefore it's understood that every time that was created, the first day, the second day, the seventh day is a new creation too. Is movon as punkt wie die erste Rega von Zman, just as the first instant of time on Sunday, when the first day of creation, the first instant, is ahisavus chadosha, that's a new creation. Azois dos benegeya dem Zman von alle sheishes meibreishes. So it was true for all 6 days of creation. Every moment of the 6 days is a new creation. The Rebbe wants to bring out and to show how Shabbos, while it's also a new creation, but yet it is higher, has a higher level, as we'll say. So the Rebbe is going through and saying that all 6 days of creation, every instant is a new creation. There's man von jeden Tag is given a nayi Shabbos. The time each day, that moment is a new creation. These are all creations of time. The Eibishter created basically 7 days. So the first instant and every moment following, that's creation from Hashem. Das heißt, that means kishem v'benegeya de nivroim von sheishis simei breishis, just as it relates to the creation from the 6 days of creation. When we talk about things that were created, everything was created from nothingness into existence. He had every different animal, every different tzemeach, every different diamond, everything was a new creation. The same thing is every moment is a new creation. Is doch jeden Tag gewesen ein Shabbos von neuen Nivroim. Every day was a creation of new created beings. Nivroim, welche seinen anders von den Nivroim von the andere Tag. These creations in each day are different than the creations from the creation for the previous day. Azoy is benegei dem zman von sheishes yimei breishis. The same thing is true as when we talk about the time of the 6 days of creation. In jeden Tag given is Havus. Every day there is a creation von sein anderes dickens man, from the different time. Every moment is different than the moment before that was created. There is man from Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni v'chulu, the time of the Sunday, Monday. Was the far Zokman, that's why we say about them, Kol Yoima v'Yoima Ovid Avidita. Every day does its work, because every day has its own creation. Kol Yom v'Yom Yesh Lekoich. Every day and day has its koyach. According to this, every day and every moment. And the Rebbe says like this: this later on, after the 7 days, it's already a cycle. It's not a new creation; it's a repeat because it was created once. But the first 7 days, they were all new. As it relates to the days that are after the 7 days of the beginning, since they are a repeat, from the Shivas Yimei Bereshis, from the 7 days of creation, Oder Protim Inzei. They're either a repeat or they become details of the first general days. The 7 days of creation were general, and these are details of the first 7 days. The Yom Harishon Zayin Yemei Bereshis. The first day of the 7 days of creation is Koilel Alla Zuntags. That includes all Sundays. Yom Sheni Alla Montags. Monday, all Mondays. No ze weiter. Darfen ze nit habun kenis havus miyuchedes. They don't require a new creation. Nor chidush hayishonos, just to renew the old ones. So, therefore, after the 7 days, it's a repeat or a detail of the generality of the first. But as opposed to the 7 actual days of creation, of the beginning of the 7 days, every day needs to be created on its own way. According to this, we need to explain this that you say, Bos Shabbos, Bos Menucha. Now, what did Shabbos bring? It brought Menucha. Shabbos, first and foremost, brought that 7th day, the time of that. That was a novel. That was the 7th day. So why do we say that what the Shabbos brought, Bos Menucha, as the Chiddush for Shabbos in them for Menucha, that the Chiddush of Shabbos is that it brought relaxation, rest. The L'chayra, the Geder von Olam is Zman B'chol Protov Umokim, would seem that the definition of the world is time, all details in time. On the 7th day is also the 24 hours of the 7th day, and that is the creation. Is der Sigven von der Zman von Yom HaShvi. So before it was the time of the 7th day, hat gefällt in Welt, then what was missing in the world, nicht nur Menucha, it wasn't only the relaxation, not only rest, nor euch the Metzias von Yom HaShvi, Zman, there was no time, there was no 7th, so there was no time. Is davon verstandig as Hainohach, so understand that it's really the same thing. That the time of Shabbos is a Menucha time. It's not, when we say Bos Shabbos, Bos Menucha, it came as man of Menucha. We can nit mechalik sein zwischen dem Etzem Yom HaShvi Zman. We cannot distinguish, we cannot separate between the essence, the time of the 7th day, and the Inyan HaMenucha was is in him, and the relaxation, the rest that's in it. There's man from Shabbos is Mehusa Inyan HaMenucha. The time of Shabbos, in essence, that is Menucha. What does that mean? Dabir in them. The Rebbe explains that time is made up from past, present, and future. And then there is some time which is not measured by past, present, and future, but it's all one point. The past, present, and future become one, as the Rebbe will explain. The beer in them. Zman is murkav von ovar hoivo nosid. Zman is made up, is combined from past, present, and future. Und in them, and in this, in em chiluf v'shinu von ovar hoivo nosid, and in the change, and when it changes from past to present to future, that's time. In that aspect of time, the change from past, present, and future, that is equal the time of all 6 days of the beginning. They're all time, they have their own unique time, but there is one general concept where they're all the past, present, and future. That is what time is. Even though each one has a novelty and something new, legabe ala andere kanal relative to all the others, as mentioned before. Aber der Eiftu von Zman von Shabbos is Menucha in Zman. But what is the time of Shabbos is different. That's Menucha within time. Hecher von Shinuyim von Over Hoive V'Osid. That is beyond, it's higher, it's above the changes of past, present, and future. Und das meint Bos Shabbos, Bos Menucha. That means when Shabbos came Menucha, as there's man von Yom HaShvi, that the time of the seventh day, was is mugder in the Shinuyim von Over Hoive V'Osid, which time is defined and is bound and in the boundaries of changes of past, present, future, is in em oich do. So he also has that Shabbos man. Va'adrabe, dos is an uftu niker, and not only does it contain it, but it's his main, is what that it's beyond time. Vert nishapech und is alle. He's turned around and elevated. Al sazman was his hecher von shinui. It's a time that is higher than change. Shabbos and menucha. So while it's zman, but it's as menucha dik zman, it's beyond change. It's Shabbos and menucha. Und weil der Zman von Shabbos allein is an inyan von Eshabcha, because since the essence, the time of Shabbos itself, is a time of turnaround, the Riber wirkter oich auf die Nyone ha'olam Shabbos. That's why it impacts also the worldly matters in Shabbos, as they zayin in an oifun, that they too are in a way from Eshabcha, that it's a turnaround. The night will shine like the day. And as we will talk about the idea, turn around their nature. So that's the novelty and that's the specialty of the Zman of Shabbos. The Rebbe is going to go ahead and bring now an example in Halacha for this idea. I say. So the Rebbe gives now a halachic example how we say that something is time, Shabbos is time, together it's menucha, it's also above time. So dugma ledover, to give an example, that over hoive v'osid, that it is past, present, and future, which is zman, und zusammen damit, and yet together with it, hecher von shinui zman, beyond the changes of time. In halacha, to find halacha, Yeshloimer, we can say that kamon yonim welche seinen verbunden mit zman. There are many matters that are associated, that are tied to time. Und sie müssen sein b'meshach kamo zman, and they need to be during a period of time. You have to keep Shabbos 24 hours, Yom Kippur 20, or whatever, the hours that you have to keep Shabbos. So there are in a Meshach Kamazman, Zainen Zeir Zain, Euch Begeder Bedin. So also while they exist, they're also in the definition, and in the halacha for Nukudachas, they're really like one point. Let me give us an example. Zum Beispiel, Kotten shehigdil be'emtza Yom HaShabbos, oder be'emtza Yom HaKippurim. If you have a minor who becomes an adult in middle of Shabbos, so he doesn't have a full Shabbos, and he only has the time of Shabbos left from when he was born, is he obligated in that Shabbos? Oder be'emtza Yom HaKippurim, or if he became an adult in the middle of Yom Kippur, is he obligated in the laws of Yom Kippur? Learn the Ragat so the Ragat he learns as Minat Torah, that from the Torah is, because with the Rabbanon, of course, you're still chayiv, but with that Torah is Benegeya Shabbos verter mechuyev b'chol inyonei Shabbos. That as far as Shabbos goes, you become obligated in all matters of Shabbos. So the minor is now obligated in all matters of Shabbos. While kol rega de Shabbos is azman proti bifnei atzmo. Because every moment of Shabbos is a time a detailed time by itself. So, therefore, you don't have to do all Shabbos. If you do every moment of Shabbos, then you are already fulfilling the Shabbos. However, but as far as Yom Kippur, Izar Potter. Over there, you won't get the obligations because Yom Kippur is one chunk. It's either you do the whole thing or nothing. It's 1 point. According to Sfiras Eimer, also could be 1 nekuda. So you see here that even though there are things that are time, and yet they are considered still to be 1 nekuda. And similar to this is also, we say apu'ula nimshechas. When you have a continuous impact, something done, and then the pu'ula, that act continues. Zum Beispiel, Yetzias Mitzrayim. Let's say, for example, the exodus of Egypt. That Areiz gained from Mitzrayim, the exodus of Egypt, which did unmuz haben and has to have a meshach zman. So going out of Egypt is a thing that takes time. And ubishinuim, it's also, there's changes in the time, in the meshach zman, in the duration of the time. You have koydem chatzois, the dinner, what happens before midnight of the Pesach, then you have chatzois, then you have midnight, and then you have la'achar chatzois after chatzois. And then you have Yom Tezvav Nisan, you have the day of the 15th. These are all within the day of the 15th of the day of going out of Mitzrayim, Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is celebrated on the 15th of Nisan. There is differences. Ubeshena Gemara, and to use the language of the Gemara, Nigalu ba'erev, they were freed in the evening, and Yotzu b'yoyim, they went out the daytime. So there is the night and the daytime. Then Chipozen the Mitzrayim, Chipozen the Yisrael, the haste of the Egyptians to chase them out, the haste of the Yidden to go out. So there was a haste. Haste means there was time. It was quick. So on one hand, we have this timely thing of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that had to be within time. Und zusammen der Mit, and yet together with that, Teuchen von Yetzias Mitzrayim, Nimshach upoil b'chol doir v'doir u'b'chol yom. The idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim extends and impacts every generation and every day. We say, so it was in a timely way, and then it goes beyond time because it impacts the old generations forever and every day forever. As chayiv odom liris atzmei, a person is obligated to see himself ki'ilu yotza hayoyim mitzrayim, as if today he went out of Mitzrayim. Inan oifun, to such an extent as ilu lo hoitza Hakadosh Baruch Hu chulu, if Hashem did not take us, Hakadosh Baruch Hu did not take us out, onu chulu, so we would be mishubadi, we would be enslaved. Hayinu lepare b'Mitzrayim to pare in Egypt. So that means that you have this pool and Mshechas eternally. So it's that thing which is timely, and yet there is no boundaries over there because it continues. Today we are getting freed from Mitzrayim, and to see if we weren't freed, we would still be we would be enslaved to pare Mitzrayim. So this explains in halacha a little bit more the over hoive ve'osid, and yet it's beyond the change of time, which is the idea of Shabbos. So Vov leidem vet men verstehen was the Alter Rebbe is madgish. Based on this, we'll understand the emphasis of the Alter Rebbe. Shenase boy neis godel. He says a big neis instead of saying a neis. The Rebbe asked, "Why neis godel?" In them is merumas the shayches to Shabbos. By neis godel, this hints to us the connection of this miracle with Shabbos. We already discussed once at length As der Godel Hanes from Shabbos Hagadol besteht in them. What is the great miracle from Shabbos Hagadol? It consists in the fact Bosarigas Hamitzrim is given durch the Bechorim Mitzrayim, that the killing of the Egyptians took place through the firstborn of Egypt. Was Bechoir is in Yonei Toikef. Bechoir represents force. What is the Bechorim Mitzrayim? The force of Egypt. The Toikef from Klippas Mitzrayim. The force of the Klippa of Mitzrayim, that's represented by the Bechorim. And when, and in the B'shas Eden gefinnen sich noch begolus Mitzrayim, and while Yidden still find themselves in the exile of Egypt, unter Memshelas Parei. So even in that situation in which the Yidden are still in exile, and means that is noch betokvei. That means that Parei's dominance is still in force. Parei mit die Mitzrayim willen beshum oifun nit arois losen. I'm so befreien die Yidden. They don't want under any circumstances to free the Yidden. Und ad kedei kach, to the extent, so while all this force in the Egyptians are not allowing, and yet in Azazman in that time itself, Monen Bechorim Mitzrayim, the firstborn of Egyptians, demand as Mezol Bafrayin the Yidden, that you should free the Yidden. Unat Kach, to the extent as Vaosa Bechoris Moem Melchama, that the Bechoris waged war with them, and they killed many of them. Und B'shas Meise, and at that time, is Toikev Parei v'Golus Mitzrayim. Yeah, and that time, the force of Egypt and the exile of Egypt, as a grois, so great as afilu nogdem horgu chulu. Even after they killed many of the Egyptians, and still didn't let them go. But Pharaoh said he didn't. They don't free the Jews. So to have under those circumstances a situation in which they're Bechorim fighting for the freedom of Yidden, that's unprecedented. That's a Neis Godel, that's a tremendous Neis. While the Yidden are still bitterly in Golus, to have the Bechorim, the Tegum Mitzrayim, fight for their freedom. This is a great miracle that we don't find anything comparable by other miracles. Nisim von Hatzolos Yisrael, the miracles of saving Yidden, seine Gewenin an Eufun von Shviras ubitla HaKlippa. Their miracle of the Savior of Yidden took place in a way of breaking and nullifying the Klippa. Aber der Nes von der Makkeh Mitzrayim b'Choreim, but on the other hand, this miracle, when Hashem smote the Egyptians with their own firstborn, is given b'derech is hapcha, that is to turn around, to have the Egyptian pu'ulas hachashoicha, an act of darkness. Normally Mitzrayim's act is darkness, and this was turned around, the pu'ulas de nahira, is hapcha chashoicha de nahira, turning around the activities, what darkness does, to make it light, that it's fighting for the freedom. That Toikev HaKlippa, the force of Klippa, had milchama gehalten the Toivas Tzad HaKedusha, waged war for the benefit of the side of Kedusha. Und der Riber is given der Tzivui von Obersten, and therefore there was the command of Hashem, as vayikchu lahem ish sel lebeis ovis, that they should take this sheep for the families, and that it should be on Shabbos, because this taking of the sheep was the beginning of the miracle of changing things around, that the Egyptians fought the Bechorim, the Klippa, the Toikim Mitzrayim fought, that took place on Shabbos. Therefore, since the result of taking that sheep, the nes from the Makim Mitzrayim B'Vchareim is given the nes from the Makim Mitzrayim B'Vchareim. This brought about the miracle of smiting the Egyptian with the firstborn. So Zayin b'Shabbos Davke, that this should be Davke and Shabbos. That Yichel Yisrael b'Shabbos should be Shabbos. Warum der Teuchen Inyan HaShabbos is bedugmas hanes, because the idea, the content of the idea of Shabbos is similar to Nes. The Shviso Bittel von the Mazikim in an Eufen, when we rest and we nullify the Mazikim, those do damage in an Eufen, as Bechoir v'Toikev HaKlippa, that the firstborn, the force of Klippa, Unchoshech Atzmoi, and darkness itself, Tut Apula Hofchis does an opposite act, Pula Sa'ir, an act of light, because that is what Shabbos, because Shabbos changes also the Mazikim, instead of doing acts of darkness, doing acts of light. This is what the Mitzrayim, the Bechayre Mitzrayim did. This is all started on Shabbos. That's why the Eibishter wants the sheep, the beginning of the Makim Mitzrayim Bechayre take on Shabbos. Zayin. Like them is move on was from the timing of phenomenon Shabbos Hagadol. According to this, we know there's many reasons given in the commentators why it's called Shabbos Hagadol. The codifiers bring different names. So amongst the timing of phenomenon Shabbos Hagadol, on the reasons for the name Shabbos Hagadol, Kleibt ois der Alter Rebbe Davke, the Alter Rebbe chooses specifically dem tam itzab dem neis from the Makim Mitzrayim B'Vchareim. He brings down the reason specifically. That's the Alter Rebbe chooses the reason that Hashem smit the Egyptian with their firstborn. That is the reason for Shabbos Hagadol. Need bringen think another time. He doesn't even bring any other reason. I feel it tam noisif. Doesn't bring even an additional reason when there's other reasons. Warum davke loitem tam? Because it's only according to this reason is good verstandig, is very well understood. Was der Shabbos wird angerufen Shabbos Hagadol. We understand why it's a great Shabbos. There's two ways of Shabbos. There is Shabbos to destroy, and there's Shabbos to destroy the Mazikim, and there is Shabbos to change around the Mazikim. This explains why it's called the Great Shabbos, the Shabbos of change of the Mazikim. The Pirush for Shabbos Hagadol is the meaning, the great rest, the great Shabbos is as in the Inyan from Shabbos ubitla Mazikim, that in the idea of Shabbos and nullifying the Mazikim is a Godel. That is a Godel. So this haste in the Gresserer und Hecherer Madrege for Shvisa, on the higher, the greater and higher level of resting. Nicht die Shvisa Bittel von Klippa, not the resting and the nullification of the Klippa, that they're not there, nor vize seinem b'mitziusum, nor as they are in their existence, they remain. Werden sie nishapich, they are turned around. As nit nor, not only seinen sie, nit mazik, not only do they not do damage, nor ze seinem misayeya zu toivu kedusha, but they help for goodness and holiness. Und der Inyan in Shabbos is nisgal geworden b'Shabbos shelifnei Yitzias Mitzrayim durch Nes Gadol. And this idea in Shabbos, the greatness of the Shabbos, was revealed on the Shabbos that preceded Yitzias Mitzrayim durch Nes Gadol, through this great miracle from the Makim Mitzrayim B'Vchareim. Nit wie bei the andere Makkahs, unlike the other Makkahs. Afilu nit wie Makkahs B'Chayres, not like even the Makkahs B'Chayres, which is given der Bittel from Klippa. Over there was the nullification of Klippa, and the other side. With the erster pirush oifel as the first interpretation and the way in Shvisa Samazikim of ridding yourself of the mazikim. But here is the Shabbos Hagadol. Nor der toike from Klippus Mitzrayim gufa. But here we had the force of Klippus Mitzrayim itself. Hadom milchama gehat midim Mitzrayim l'tovas Yisrael, waged war with the Egyptians to the benefit of the Yidden. And that's why it is Shabbos Hagadol, the greater part of Shabbos, the greater part of ridding of the mazikim, not destroying the mazikim, but rather turning them around, which was the miracle of Lamakim Mitzrayim Bivchareim. Oisches. So now the Rebbe will explain another part in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch in this explanation. The Alter Rebbe goes through a great deal of explanation at length, explaining how Yud Nisan was Shabbos Hagadol because of Pesach was on Thursday, so Yud, which is 5 days earlier, was on Tezvav, was on Shabbos. And why does the Alter Rebbe need to bring down this whole explanation? It's a Gemara, it's a Tosfos, but the Alter Rebbe could have just said that Shabbos before Pesach was Yud Nisan, which was the time when K'chu B'Asar L'Chodesh, without going in giving you over here the language and the reasoning of the Gemara and Tosfos over there. Why does the Alter Rebbe bring this down? The Rebbe says that Alter Rebbe wants to emphasize the connection from the K'chu B'Asar L'Chodesh with the Mitzrayim, with this whole nation, with these hapchim, as the Rebbe will explain now. Ches. Al pizeh ken men mevayer zayin. Based on this, we can explain al pi pnimius hinyonim, in the inner matter of things. Noch adiuk in Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, another specific that the Alter Rebbe writes, which is difficult. In Anfang Seif, in the beginning of the section, where Zokt, where he says Va'isa Hayoim Shabbos Hoyo, that day, the day of the miracle when Lamakim Mitzrayim Bivchareim, when they all gathered, that was Shabbos. Izer Moisiv, he adds Sha'arei Behei B'Shabbos Yotzu Yisrael MiMitzrayim. On Thursday of the week, the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, K'moshe Kosu B'Simen Tov Tzadik Dalet, as written in the chapter Tov Tzadik Dalet. V'kivon shetezvav b'Nisan hoyo behei b'Shabbos. Since the 15th of Nisan was on Thursday, imkein asore b'Nisan hoyo b'Shabbos. So that's when we know that the 10th of Nisan was on Shabbos. So he brings the evidence that Oisa Yom, he doesn't just say that day was Shabbos, but he quotes from the Gemara and from Tosfos that the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim on Thursday, and therefore we have to say that the 10th was Shabbos. So we need to understand. This that on Thursday of the week the Jews left Mitzrayim is mevur in Gemara. That is, the Gemara says that they left on Thursday. Und in Tosfos is do der Cheshbon. Tosfos brings down this calculation as al pizeh is Shabbos given asore b'Nisan. So based on this, Shabbos was the 10th of Nisan. So this is very clearly in the Gemara and Tosfos. Aber zu livos bring those der Alter Rebbe b'Shulchan Aruch. Why does the Alter Rebbe bring this in the Shulchan Aruch? Now, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch are not just facts, but he brings reasoning. But this seems to be just quoting and not even a reason. This is Hein Emes as in Zayin Shulchan Aruch. Let it be true that in his Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe, as opposed to the regular Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch brings the Alter Rebbe ha'halachas b'taimein. The Alter Rebbe brings the laws and also brings the reasoning. But in our case, this is not a reasoning. Aber das ist doch nicht kein Tam. It's not a reason. Nor mehr nicht wie ein Inyan von Cheshben und it's only a matter of Cheshben, and the source from where this Cheshben comes from, the calculation to figure out that Shabbos was Yud Nisan, and the source of the Alter Rebbe is very clearly in the Gemara and Tosfos, as mentioned earlier. Is doch nicht matig b'Shulchan Aruch loshem mekoyre halachas. Generally, Rashi, the Alter Rebbe, does not quote in the Shulchan Aruch the language of the source of the halachas. And most of the case, also not the source of the place. So he doesn't even say, doesn't quote the source, and he doesn't say the name of the source. And here he's quoting the Gemara and Tosfos. It should have been enough. It would have been sufficient. That the day of when they had the fight with the Bechorim, and the Bechorim fought with their parents after asking the what they're doing was on Shabbos. And the Rebbe said we want to connect this, that the day of Yom Tov, the day of Nis of Yud Nis is actually connected with Pesach Mitzrayim. Via Shleimar, so we can say, as midem vert mevuer der Teuchen und der Siba von Shabbos Hagadol, that by bringing this down with this, it is explained the content and the reason of Shabbos Hagadol. Ubahagdim. Introducing, there's two ways to learn how the intention and the purpose of Asar LaChodesh. Bahagdim, the kavona v'tachlis funam tzivui. What is the intent and the goal of the command? Ba'asar LaChodesh hazeh v'yikchu lahem ish selebeis of his gomer. That on the 10th of this month they shall take a sheep for the family. What is the purpose? What is the intent with this mitzvah? And that eventually was hod gebracht Tzulamake Mitzrayim b'fchereim, to the smiting the Egyptians with their firstborn. You are able to explain this in two ways. Aleph, number one, das nemen dem se ba'osor lachodesh und die Nisim von Shabbos Hagadol, that the taking of the sheep on the 10th of the month, and then the miracles that took place of that great Shabbos, seinen given nit nor a hagdom on achonat sakrovas haPesach. They were not just a introduction and a preparation to the offering of the Pesach b'Yudal b'Nisan on the 14th of Nisan. So on the 14th of Nisan they shechted, and now they prepared it ahead of time. Ungulas Mitzrayim Shalachar is it's a preparation for the redemption Mitzrayim that followed, to start off at the 10th, bring the sheep, and then shechting it, and then preparing for the Akrovas Pesach and the redemption Mitzrayim. But it also had a purpose in of itself. Base number two, the other way is the kavona und tachlis von kiches hasev chulu, that this intent and the purpose of taking the say is given nor als hachona v'agdoma to hakrovas haPesach ugulos Mitzrayim. This was only as a preparation for the Pesach Gulos Mitzrayim. So either it is not just a Hagdom Achona, that it has its own purpose, number one, or it is totally for the purpose as an introduction to the bringing the Pesach and Gulos Mitzrayim. Similar, you can say in the spiritual matter. The Giluyim und die Nisim b'Shabbos Hagadol, the revelations and the miracles that took place on the Shabbos Hagadol, seine gekommen nur als Hagdome v'Hachone that they're just in the spiritual level, that these miracles that took place are only an introduction and a preparation to the ultimate revelation, in which the Melech Malch HaMlochim, the King who King's King himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his glory, in his honor, and by himself, revealed himself. And that brought the exit of Egypt. Or perhaps we can say, in them is given there was something independent in the Shabbos Hagadol, in the taking of the Ba'asr B'chodesh. In them is given a besonder inyan, was is not in Yitzias Mitzrayim. There was something else which is not Yitzias Mitzrayim. And the Alter Rebbe is trying to tell us, no, this is all part of Yitzias Mitzrayim. But the Rebbe, the Shas that is Mevayer the Minyan for Shabbos HaGodl, when the Alter Rebbe explains the idea of Shabbos HaGodl, Zog der Alter Rebbe says, Sharei behei b'Shabbos yotzu Yisrael miMitzrayim, that on Thursday the Yidden went to Mitzrayim. And since the 15th was on Thursday, so the 10th had to be on Shabbos. Their meat is a Meisiv Biur. This he adds explanation as the Inyan from them Tog Ba'asal HaChodesh Hazeh. What is the idea of this day Ba'asal HaChodesh Hazeh? Der Tzivu v'yicholchem goimer, this command take for you, und the Nisim was gekommen von dem gekommen, and the following miracles that came from this, kommt als amesuva v'untitzo, this comes as a consequence, as a result, von a cheshbon meyuset of a special a calculation. It's based on behei b'Shabbos yotzu Yisrael miMitzrayim cholu, that they went out on Thursday, and this is Sunday from the going out, which is in Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's all Exodus of Egypt. There's no separate. This is the Shabbos HaGodl is part of the Exodus of Egypt. The Rebbe continues in Oistes Al Pi Hanal. And based on the above, as the Nes von Shabbos HaGodl is al derech inyan that the miracle of Shabbos HaGodl is similar to the concept of turning darkness to light. Is noch memavur beprimis inyonim deisofa. We understand even more in the inner matters the addition of behei b'Shabbos chulu, that this was on Thursday, and the connecting to Yitzias Mitzrayim with the Shabbos HaGodl. Shabbos is doch Sfiras HaMalchus. Shabbos is Sfiras HaMalchus, the seventh of the Sfiras, starting with Chesed, and the Shabbos is Malchus. As we say, Shabbos Malchus, Shabbos is the queen. Damult steht Sfiras HaMalchus, and Shabbos Sfiras HaMalchus is standing in an aliyah, in an elevation, which means that the Sfiras Malchus goes up to the higher Sfiras, to Zo and Bina, Zeir Ampin and Bina, Chulu. Aber, wie bald as Malchus mitzad Atzma wird angerufen, Nehoire, Uchma Utechilas. It's called a light of dark, and that consumes. It burns, sie verbrennt und sie ist machala. That means that it burns and it destroys, consumes us haste. Mitzad ir wird der Bittlung kiloin amenagit. From the perspective of Malchus, the opponent is destroyed. That's techilas, destroys the one. Ischot as Shabbos is doch in yonei shvisa men amazikin chulu kinal. So although Shabbos, is, as said earlier, is resting on the mazikim, the main revelation of this would only be in the futures to come. Ben esvet zayin Shabbos umenucha l'chayei ho'ilamim, when there will be Shabbos and relaxation, rest and relaxation for eternity. That's going to be in the future to come. But now, Mashenkin Lifnei before is that is Hapchof on Shabbos, not in Klippas Noiga. Now, Shabbos that it turns around is only in the Klippas Noiga, not in the Gimel Klippas at Meis Alachas Kam V'Kamo. In them Zman when Eden Zayin noch given Mitzrayim, for sure. Therefore, of course, how much more so when the Yidden, in the time when the Yidden were in Egypt, Fardem Tzivu of Shmir Shabbos, they weren't even commanded yet in Shmir Shabbos. Hat doch das nicht mehr given Begilui. So that level did not shine openly. It wasn't yet the level that you can turn over the opponent completely. Is only Klippas Noiga. That Ibn Israel Terem that's what explains as the Nes from Shabbos Hagadol, that this miracle of Shabbos Hagadol, which is still in the lower level, is verbunden mit dem Gilui von Geulas wie Yitzias Mitzrayim shel Acher Zeh. This is tied with the revelation and the redemption and exodus of Egypt that follows. Was damult hat Meir given Sfiras Habino al Modecheru. At that time, the revelation came from the Sfira of Bina, which is the world of freedom, which is the level of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Bu'ula yesh loimar, and perhaps we can say liyoisas Bina is shoydesh ha'gevuros, since Bina is the root of the gevuros. Kommt mitzad ir der inyan fun is hapcha anal. That's why, because of Bina, comes that turnaround, the Maki Mitzrayim Bivchareim, to turn everything around. So, in other words, we're trying to get the greater level of Geula Hasidah, the level of Ishapcha that takes place then, which was demonstrated in the Maki Mitzrayim Bivchareim Ishapcha. We're saying that this comes from the Shab, it comes from Yitzias Mitzrayim, from the level of Bina, which is Hapcha. Lemaki Mitzrayim Bivchareim. Warum wie bald as ein Habdinim nimtokim ella b'shorsom, that the judgments, they're sweetened only in the root. You got to go back to the source. Vert mitzad dem der Shabbos shvisum en hamazikim. So that's the way you become the Shabbos, resting from the mazikin in a neufem von Godel. That you change around. That is hapche von the mazikim as seine Messiah zu Kedusha. The turn around from those who are mazikim, that they actually end up supporting Kedusha. I mean, this is a complicated words of Chassidus and Pnimius Oinyonim, but basically the point is that Shabbos became a Shabbos Hagadol because of its connection to Yitzias Mitzrayim, which benefits from the level of Bina. Shabbos in itself is Bina. And later on, when you come to the Shabbos Hagadol, in the level of Bina, and so you have the ability in that Shabbos to benefit from the level of Bina, which will really be manifest itself in the future in La'asid Loving. This needs a little bit further explanation and thought, but we will continue. Yud says Yedua the Pirush HaArizal. The Rebbe concludes now with the practical support that we can get from this Shabbos Hagadol in our Avodas Hashem. There is known the interpretation of the Arizal from Posik Vayomim Ha'ele Niskorim Benasim. Pasuk in the Megillah, these days are mentioned and they're done as b'shas this chira is kidaboi, that when remembering is proper, poilt men metut oiv them venasim, then we impact and we accomplish that they are done. if we remember properly, we get it. We get it now when we remember it. Right now, we're still in a situation that we're still slaves of Achashverosh. We're still in Golus. We find ourselves in a doubled and quadrupled darkness. From the Eden in Mitzrayim, similar to the situation that the Eden were in Egypt by Mizman from Asora ben Nisan, Shabbos Hagadol. At that time, they were also on 10th and Nisan, Shabbos Hagadol. Eden were slaves in Egypt. So we ourselves find ourselves in a similar situation now that we're in a Golus which is double and quadrupled. Ken ober yeder id zayin avoda. So every yid is able to, if his service through his avoda fun, mishchu ukchulochem, you can earn and get the Shabbos Hagadol. What is mishchu ukchulochem? The Mechilta teaches, the Mechilta interprets, mishchu avoda zora v'idopku b'mitzvos. Pull yourself away from idol worship and connect to the mitzvahs. But in this case means azer tzitzich avek, that you pull yourself away, which means hitzich ois, that you are careful from yeder avoida v'sizor eloi. Not literally only idol worship, we're talking avoida zora, it's a strange work for him, fremd farayidin. It is strange and foreign for a Jew. So avodah zorah in Pashtan Zin Rachman Islam, not talking about the very simple meaning, God forbid, avodah zorah. Hot ayid ken shum shaychis nid. Ayid has no connection. You don't have to pull away from that because there's no connection in the first place. Befrat noch dem wird misalig wenn dem Yitzhahara von avodah zorah, especially after the inclination, the evil inclination, Yitzhahara for avodah zorah has been, as the Gemara relates, has been removed. So, only thing you gotta remove the avodah zorah loy, and when there state b'chlod deikas b'mitzvos, and you stand connected through mitzvahs. Ubechlolus, in talking about it generally, mishchu is der kaf and sur mirah. Mishchu is the line of stay away from evil. Chulochem, take to you, that's Yidovku b'mitzvahs, is their kav, is the line from Vasei Toiv, do good. Ervet ton di avoda, you will do the service mit neutikun toikif, with the necessary force, Ibergegebenkeit, and devotion, mashpia sein, and to influence, poil sein, and to impact durch sein hashpoa, through your influence, Ados zolton euch atzveterit. So also another Yid would do that. Unebendig from the Eigen Ebnei Bayis, to begin with your own family members. V'yichu lahem ish sel lebeis abis, your family members. So you can be the Shabbos Hagadol. When you mishchu kchu, your devotion, you got away from the surmerah, and you connect with the mitzvahs, and you influence others, but durch dem atzliach sein. Through this you will succeed. Zu wirken euch auf dem dreisendike Welt arumim. You will impact also the outside world around you. Euch auf die Umesoilam, also on the nations of the world. Bis as b'chayreim fodrum b'toikev tefes Yisrael. To the extent that their firstborn, they demand with force the benefit, the goodness for the Yidden. Just like the days, the Pasuk says that you went out of Mitzrayim, we will experience noch in Goluzayin, while we're in exile, is Nes Godel Nasa, there's a great miracle happens. And the Yidden prepared themselves for Enu Niflois. I will show you miracles. B'noreinu, b'skenenu, with our young and with our old. B'banenu, b'bneseinu, with our sons and our daughters, as the Pasuk says. And as the Pasuk further says, Lo tishoyer parsa, one foot will not remain. Everybody goes. Arois gain from Golus b'geula, to go out of exile, b'geula amitis v'hashlema, in the true and complete redemption, like the Mashiach Tzidkenu, to the righteous Mashiach, the Korev Mamish. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Tzav. Shabbos Hagadol, Tavshin Lamed Hey.